Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail.
All right, everybody, as promised, we have the big buck killer of 2022 on the podcast with us, Joe Miles. We've teed this up for the last month that we wanted to have you on and talk about this almost, I'm going to go ahead and call it a historic season, because it seemed like Don and I would get on the podcast and say, Joe Miles shot another buck this week. It seemed like it was every week from the beginning of season. First of all, welcome to the show. Thanks for the support of Osseo to Chasing Giants, but most of all, congratulations on just an awesome year.
Well, man, thank you all so much for having me again. You know, it's over the last, I guess, 2 years, really, you know, getting to know you guys and everything. It's just such a good fit for us at Osseo, and love working with y'all, and have learned so much, you know, just going out there to Don's farm for the master class and seeing how he set that thing up. And it's been just overwhelming, you know, getting to know y'all and getting to hang out with you and learn from you. So thank you so much for having me on again. And yeah, man, this year was something great for sure.
So, Joe, you started in your home state of South Carolina. Is that right? Back in August?
That's right. We opened here August 15th. We have I think it's the second earliest season in the country.
And it didn't take you long to get on the board.
Opening afternoon.
Yeah, and you haven't slowed down a bit since. And we was joking before we started recording. You know, it seemed like it's been a week since you've shot something, so you're overdue.
Yeah, I told y'all before I'm headed to Mexico tomorrow to try and hunt some mule deer down there. So I'm excited about that. I've never mule deer hunted in Mexico, and it'll be quite an experience. I think we'll hunt over some water holes and stuff. The rut down there is kind of ending, and I'm excited to get down there and try it. I don't know that they've had a lot of bow hunters in this area, so it's definitely going to be challenging. But I'm all packed up and going to head to the airport about 3:45 in the morning. So I'm excited about that.
Well, awesome. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Are you keeping score? Do you know how many bucks you've shot this season?
Yes, I have shot 7 this season.
7, is that all?
Yeah.
It seems like 17.
Yeah, I shot 7. I shot 3 here at home in South Carolina, and then shot a really big 200-inch mule deer in Alberta, and then went to Kansas kind of for the pre-rut and shot a deer that had been after for a long time. He was a 9.5-year-old, and I, you know, Don, that's something I kind of wanted to ask you about that Kansas buck. He was the weirdest deer. He would show up late October, right until the rut, and then he would be gone, and it was always at night. And it was obviously the property I was hunting on was not exactly where he was living, but this year he just boom, just 3 or 4 times in a row, daylight, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just showing up right up through this draw. And I ended up going and shooting him. And I've heard this 3 or 4 times, but do you think when they get to be a certain age, 9.5 or older, they start letting their guard down, or you just think it's just happenstance? What's your thoughts on that?
You know, it's funny you should mention this, because we just talked about this today. I was in northern Indiana doing a field day on a property that I've consulted on multiple times over the past few years. And we had, over the last 2 days, we had 4 groups come in, one each morning, one each afternoon. And just today we was talking about these bucks and how when they get older, I think that, in my opinion, the toughest buck to kill is a 5-year-old. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they get a little bit harder each year, starting as a yearling. Each year they get a little tougher to kill, up to 5. And 5, to me, seems to be when they're the toughest. And then after that, it seems like each year they get a little bit easier. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think they become so comfortable in their home range that they've survived, everything we've thrown at them, and they just feel overconfident and they start moving more in daylight. And I know that outdoor writer Bill Winke has written about this a few times, and he's noticed the same thing. So I think there's absolutely something to it.
It's just got to be. This deer got shot in the hip as a 4-year-old, and he was always in that 170 to 190 range, depending on the year that he had. And we didn't know if he was around his 5-year-old year, but he did show back up. 6-year-old, a buddy of mine hunted him for the whole season. Never saw him. Had a few nighttime pictures. I hunted him as a 7-year-old and got the last picture of him on November 2nd, and then we thought he was dead. We got no more pictures of him, gone. And then, lo and behold, as an 8-year-old, he showed up again. Nobody hunted him that year. I had already killed a buck in Kansas. And then I went in and got everything set up. I went out there actually in August and got some stuff set up. And then I went back out in October around the 15th and got everything dialed, got all my cameras in, everything done. And my plan was to come back around Halloween and just hunt him for the whole rut. And I flew home on Friday, and when I landed, he showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning up this draw where I just put a trail camera out, and it was a cold front coming in. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to fly back out there Sunday, and flew back out there Sunday. My buddy that lives out there picked me up. He had an old Suburban I could use, drove out to the farmhouse where I stayed, got in that tree that afternoon, and a doe came in to a picked bean field. And I heard a fence wire pop, a cattle fence wire, like where a deer had jumped it. And I said, you know what? I bet that's him. And getting dark, and I'm watching that doe, and she throws her head up and looks, and sure enough, he came right up the draw, right up the trail, looking at her, and I was able to get an arrow in him, and he didn't go 50 yards, and the story was over. But that was, of all the deer I've hunted, that's one of the most special ones, because it's been such a long history with that deer, and to shoot one that old, and it almost sad. I don't know if that's the right word, but when I walked up to him, I was certainly excited. But an old warrior like that, man, it was great, being able to hunt a deer like that.
Well, I totally understand the feeling when you shoot one. It's bittersweet. Have you been filming these hunts, Joe? Or
I've got a couple of them on film. Some of them I do, some of them I don't. I wish I did not have a camera in the tree for this one. I should have. It would have been. I did a lot of that in my 30s and even into my early 40s, and I kind of missed just the pure hunting. But I want to start again. I do like doing the filming, but I just kind of took a break from it and just concentrated on the hunting.
So Don, I got a question about your answer there, to circle back on that an older buck might be easier to kill than a 5-year-old. Do you think it's his personality letting his guard down, or do you think he has his home range dialed in enough that in an area that doesn't have any intrusion that he knows it's safe?
Well, Bill Winke again wrote about this as well, and I think I've seen the same thing, is that as they get older, their home range shrinks.
It shrinks to a smaller core area that they're probably feeling safer at.
Right. Yep. And that there's probably something to that, that they do feel safer in that smaller area, and that's probably why they pick that as their core area. When they're younger, they've got that bigger range, and they've figured out where within that range they're the safest, and boom, they get old, and that's where they camp out.
And it's so sorry, Terry. It's so funny that you talk about that safe range. I mean, there's huge, vast draws around this area that I hunted, and it's low deer density. But this buck was living 200 yards from a cattle barn. I mean, almost in a guy's backyard. and we had never hunted him at this end of the property. And it just, I got a picture of him, and I thought, and then the light bulb went off, and it should have gone off 3 dadgum years ago. But there was a little block of timber right there that an old couple owned. Nobody ever went in there. It was the famous grown-up cattle pasture, but it was only, I don't know, 7, 8 acres of really thick stuff. And I never got to walk in there because I didn't have permission to go in there, but I guarantee if I did, it would have looked like Freddy Krueger had been in there ripping those trees apart. That was his home, and it just over and over and over, it repeats itself, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's just the typical big buck. I mean, that's how they get old. They find that little pocket where nobody even thinks to bother them. And it also, you know, kind of plays into the beginner's luck, you know, idea where the new deer hunter doesn't know what he's doing. He goes out and shoots the biggest buck in the woods the opening morning because he goes someplace that no other deer hunter that knows what they're doing would ever go.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, right. I mean, I could see the barn. I could have shot the barn with my bow where I was set up. And he walked right by it, you know, right up the, you know, it was a good funnel. And he just walked right up it. You know, that was where he was going out to feed. And it just, man, it was worked out good.
So what happened after Kansas?
Well, Kansas, then I was kind of scrambling for the rut, and kind of got my rear end handed to me during the rut. I bounced around a little bit in Ohio on some permission properties, and a buddy let me hunt a lease that he had. And, you know, that first 7 days was pretty terrible weather-wise. I know we talked about that. And then there were some other people coming in to hunt it. And so I kind of pulled out of there and came home. And then, you know, when it gets to December for me, that's kind of when I start heading way south, Texas, Mexico, and took some father and sons down to a big ranch in Mexico, and we hunted down there and had great luck there. It's a 30-something thousand acre ranch, and I was trying to get Wes to go with me. Wes Delps was going to go with me, but we didn't have any availability. I thought one guy was going to fall out and Wes was going to be able to get in and go, but the guy ended up that was on the fence ended up, you know, going with us. But they've had some really big deer, some 180s and 190s, you know, 100% free range, 30,000 acre ranch. And this year their rainfall was really weird. In the, I guess, the March, April, May time frame, they got no rain. It was a severe drought. And then when October rolled around, it just poured and greened everything up. So it was a challenging year for horns, and then it was a challenging year for cover, you know, because they had so much browse. It was hard to get them out in the open where you could, you know, where you could get an arrow in them. But we did end up shooting two nice ones down there, and I just love that because the weather's so nice. The rut is so visible. You know, we hunt it in mid-December, and it's snort wheezing, chasing, fighting, scrapes, rubs. I mean, you see all of that, and the weather's nice. It's just a good, fun, different environment to hunt in.
So how many states did you hunt in all? Do you keep count of that, or?
Well, let's see. I hunted Alberta, Kansas, Ohio, Kentucky, South Carolina, Mexico, and then back to Mexico. Yep, that was my circuit.
Wow. You know, most people don't hunt that many states in a lifetime, and here you do it in a season. You're getting ready to go again.
I have a bad disease, Don, a really bad disease.
A bad disease and a really understanding wife.
She is an absolute dream. We need to get her on the podcast and not have me on here, and y'all could get some really, really good intel.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you was an old buck, you'd be hard to kill because you're never in the same place very long.
Oh, you're always picking up moving. She could kill me pretty quick, and I think she thinks about it sometimes.
So I got a question I'm going to ask you here just in a bit, but before we do that, Joe, tee up this mule deer hunt that you're getting ready to leave for, because everybody's going to be, we're going to send them to watch your social media to see. I'm sure you're going to give status updates as you're going to do that, because this is almost kind of a rut's winding down post rut hunt, and what's it going to be? What's the setups? What's the targets? Any details like that so you can tee it up?
Yep. So going to Sonora, we fly into Hermosillo, and we're hunting a ranch called the La Brea Ranch. BREA is the name of the ranch, and it's up there in the 30,000 acre range, and they do commercial mule deer hunting and coos deer hunting on it. And it's me and two buddies that are going down that I've hunted with, a long time, and they're going to rifle hunt. And the way those guys rifle hunt that is they ride around on those top racks, those trucks where you're up on top and you just ride those desert roads looking for mule deer. And the ruts, it's winding down exactly like you say. I'm going to be hunting some pop-up blinds and some brush blinds. And I think I'm going to have to be a little bit instrumental on the setup and that sort of thing, because they're not super familiar with how to bow hunt. So it'll be interesting. They do have feeding stations, and I don't know about that yet. We'll see what happens there. But mostly pop-up blinds and water holes is the intel that I've gotten, and it could be all day sits. I mean, it gets down to the 20s in the mornings there, so it gets good and cold, but then it can get up to the 80s. In the day, so you can have a 50, 60 degree temperature change. So it
Gotcha.
could be all day sits. I don't know, but I'll be keeping everybody posted, and I'm excited to go try it.
All right, so I got a question for both of you, but I want to pose two different questions about the same topic, and I'm going to start with Don. And we talked in the opening segment about the land consulting that we've both done. I've been in basically mountain areas for the last 3 visits that I've done. One of them's been in Tennessee, one of them's been in southwestern Kentucky, and then today I was up in Pike County, Ohio. And so much of these big timber areas, in small properties, you have to maximize every square foot of the property. We're not hunting these big ranches. You're talking 50, 60, 70 acres in some cases. And when we go in and we see hillsides that have timber, and Don and I and Wes always have this saying that you can't cut it too hard when we're talking about TSI, where we're opening up that canopy. It's probably where most landowners look at us most cross-eyed and say, "You want me to do what?" But we're looking at these big hillsides and trees where you can see, 70 yards across the ground when you're walking, just big open timber. And we want them to cut those trees either by logging or just real aggressive TSI. Don, how do you explain to the customer just to trust the process, and what happens to that forest floor, even if it's big trees, small trees, whatever, when we open up that canopy? Explain what the environment does, how long it takes to transform, because it's really this glazed over. Even the guys that I was with today are like, "You want me to do what?" Talk just a little bit about that, how you work with clients and what opening up that forest floor, especially like on a south-facing hillside, does.
Well, I start by, explaining that we got to make your property as much different from the neighbors as we possibly can. And, that's with better cover, better food, every way we possibly can. We need to make your property better in the eyes of the deer than your neighbor. And then hopefully we're somewhere close to the property line, and I say, look to your neighbor's woods, look at your woods. What's the difference? Today, there's no difference whatsoever. It's both the same. And, if you want to set your property apart from him, you're going to have to cut this hard and make it a lot thicker than his cover, because those mature bucks, they seek out the thickest, nastiest cover they can to bed in. And, once they understand that their property has to be drastically different than the neighbor, then they're a little more accepting of coming in there. And, I tell them, I'm all for being a good steward. I don't want to just come in there and destroy the woods without regard to the next generation of landowners that might own that property. You can come in there and do a very aggressive timber harvest and take the trees that are of value and still leave a lot of the younger trees of the good species, because even in a really good woods, there's going to be plenty of trees that are never going to have value. They've got they're either of a species that's not going to have a lot of value, or the branch structure of the tree is just not going to lend that tree to timber production. So you might as well get rid of those trees. And the key to doing, or the key to improving that habitat, is getting sunlight in. You want to open up that canopy and get as much sunlight as you possibly can. And I tell them, if it looks like a tornado come through there and just leveled the woods, it may look terrible for a time being, but all it takes is one summer of sunlight shining in there on the forest floor, or the ground, and the place is just going to explode with new growth, weeds, briars, tree saplings. And not only are you creating better bedding cover, but you're also creating better browse for the deer.
So the thing that I also have challenged a couple clients is it's the fastest way to get thick cover. Because if we have an open field and we want to go plant switchgrass in there, that's at best 2 year, maybe 3 year process to have truly fantastic bedding, especially these south facing hillsides. I don't know what it is about it, the constant more sunlight, and it explodes. Even the year that you cut it and open that canopy, it explodes from the bottom up.
Yeah, there's no faster way to make cover than going into a wooded area and letting the sunlight in. It takes literally one summer.
All right. So, Joe, the reason that I asked this question with you on it is because you just talked about how you bounce around and go all over the place to hunt. When you see a transition of different structure in woods or fingers or funnels, you hunt a lot of big timber country down in South Carolina too. Is that something that you always are looking for? If I find a thick spot, or I find a thick spot next to an open spot, or a thick spot next to a ravine, are you hunting that edge? I mean, we're basically telling our clients, do this for the cover, but you can also, from a hunter standpoint, create the exact spot you want to hunt.
Without question. As Don was talking, I was thinking about one of my friends that's actually going on this mule deer hunt with me. They have 2,500 acres of the most manicured, beautiful property you have ever seen. It is giant 50-year-old pine trees, giant oaks, golf course type roads and food plots. It's world class. He has a neighbor that he cannot stand that has 75 acres of cutover, and guess what? That neighbor kills all the big deer. So, I mean, it is, and you see it over and over and over again. And I hunt, here at home, these big, the Congaree Swamp Basin is what I hunt, and it's big hardwood flats and swamp. And where guys go in and log, most of them are timber tracks, and where they go in and log and where they meet those big open woods, those edges, that is absolute dynamite. That's where you find all the scrapes, all the rubs. They're bedding in there. I mean, it takes, Don, I think you mentioned this, it takes guys a little bit to figure that out. But when that light bulb flips and they see what that edge does, I mean, to me, whitetails are creatures of the edge. They feel so safe. They can get back in that thicket if they need to. They're brave enough to come to the edge before it gets dark a lot of the time. So it's the edge is to me, that's key.
So yeah, it's just a topic that we talk about on every property that we go to, because it's the fastest way we can manipulate the property to create cover and differentiate that property from the neighbors. And the reason I wanted both of you to answer that question is both from the habitat, quick regeneration of the forest floor, thick cover, and then the backside of it, if we do it strategically and put that edge close to where we have access to get in and out, then you end up with a game changer spot, especially when it's on the downwind side.
No doubt.
All right.
Yep.
Well, Don, I got a funny story for you. Joe's a good old
sock.
No, Joe's a good old Southern boy now. You know how them Southern boys are. And at the ATA show, I was sitting in his booth hanging out for a couple hours, and I told him about the new NutriCrave deer corn that we were coming out with. And you talk about a good old country Southern boy getting a little bit excited.
Yes, sir.
About what Real World's got coming out. We had a really good conversation about what's coming, and he's excited about that. But we're just as excited about what he has coming in the Osseo line. And I'm going to tee this up just a little bit. At the end of the podcast of this episode, after the listener submitted questions, we're going to play a short segment where Joe's going to tee up a teaser of what he's willing to talk about in new products today. But what it's going to do is we're also through the month of, I believe, March and April, right before and as we get into turkey season, there's some big things that are just fascinating that we're going to do small segments every week and record and play in lieu of the Osseo commercial. So after we get done with the listener submitted questions, we're going to have Joe back on to tee that whole thing up and talk about the new products that we got coming this year. All right, well, to end today's show, we got Joe Miles back on to tee up some new products that he's announced at the ATA show. You got a big trade show circuit ahead of you. I know a lot of our Amish friends listening on MTech are going to be really excited to see you at different trade shows with stock inventory on hand that they can carry out there with them. But Don and I were just talking, man, it is so awesome to see how many people have truly trusted this camo pattern and the quality of the garment, and we see it everywhere we go when we're out on the road. And Don, it's everywhere, isn't it?
Well, the observation that just blows me away is a year ago, I did 80 some properties, traveled from Kansas clear out to the East Coast, everywhere in between. I did not see a single Osseo garment, but Osseo was brand new. So that's not really surprising. But this year, literally 50% of the places, maybe more than 50% of the places that I go to, there is an Osseo garment either on somebody, laying in the truck seat, or wherever. I see Osseo everywhere now. And I'm talking 1 year, just 1 year. And it's just, I don't know the reason for it. It's amazing, but I just love seeing good people succeed. And Joe's one of the best guys in the entire hunting industry. Not only is he a big buck slayer, but he's one of them guys that you root for to be successful in the deer woods, but also to be successful in the business world.
Well, we know he's working his tail off at both, so that's the best thing is nothing was handed to him with this whole thing. He's worked his tail off to get both the bucks on the wall and the business off the ground.
Well, I think we all know, about the hard work and what it takes, but not to get, off topic here, but I tell you, without any question, the partnership that we have, and with you guys, talking about the brand, believing in the brand, it has made a huge difference in Osseo and getting it out to people. So I cannot thank y'all enough. It has made a huge difference with what you guys have done, spreading the word. And the fact that the thing that was so amazing to me, I mean, I get 3 to 5 emails a week, guys wanting me to sponsor them and send them free stuff to put on their Instagram page. You guys, I mean, bought the stuff and said, hey, wait a minute now.
Are we still the only ones that did that?
The only, I'm telling you, I mean, you know how it is at ATA. I mean, every 20 minutes, there's a new up and coming TV show, up and coming YouTube. Hey, we want stuff. And you guys are the only ones that literally bought it. I tried to give it to you. You refused it. You bought it because and it makes sense. You didn't want the obligation of, hey, if this stuff's junk, we're not gonna tout it, and that's something that I think a lot of your listeners and followers appreciate. The fact that there's not a whole lot of BS there, and you tell it like it is. And if it's not something that works for you, you're not going to be dealing with it. And once again, thank you all so much.
Well, we're definitely not the norm. Last week, Don had to disappear for 12 minutes of the podcast to go use the bathroom and came back sweating, running down his face. So,
but you know what? I still had both socks on when I got back.
You know what? My mother got on me about talking about you and a Code Brown on the podcast. She says, Terry Lane, I can't believe you talk that way on the air.
Well, good for her. Good for her.
We are who we are. Well, let's get back on track here, Joe. Let's tee up what we're going to do is you got some new exciting stuff that we're going to go ahead and tease today.
Yep.
But we're going to go into more detail and show samples as this stuff comes in through the year. We're going to do mini segments and pick a product maybe each week, do a minute or two little video or sampling of it. But let's do an overview right now of the key core things that are coming out this year that we can talk about today.
Yep.
And get a little bit of hype behind our listeners. And then to end this segment and the show, if you can do it offhand, I didn't tell you to prepare for this, but mention the trade shows you're going to be at with product, if you know those off the top of your head, or at least the next couple ones that we can have people ready.
Yeah, I've actually got a photo of those. We will be starting out in Harrisburg. That'll be the next show. That's February 4th through the 12th. So that's the first one. That's that big Harrisburg show. We've got a big booth there, ton of inventory, and
so people will be able to try it on, touch and feel it, pick the right size.
Yep, take it with them if they want it. If they don't want to carry it around the show, we can drop ship it to them. They can try it on, buy it all there. We can ship it to them, or they're welcome to take it with them if that's what they prefer. But we're going to have a truckload of inventory up there.
We actually have stories of people that have tried on these garments and actually got mad because they couldn't take it with them. They wanted to take it, and you said, I got to ship it to you. And like they literally got mad. So that won't happen at these trade shows, starting with the Harrisburg. So tell us what's new, because there's two of these things that I am just absolutely stoked about.
Yep. So starting out, the backpack was a pretty big hit. We're going to have just a smaller version of that for the run and gun guys that want something a little bit smaller. Our backpack right now is 2,600 cubic inches, and these will come in at 1,800 cubic inches. So that's one thing. We've got a non-metallic belt. It's something I've never understood, why in the hunting industry nobody's made a belt that doesn't have a buckle where you might rub or hit something on. So we've got a non-metallic belt that's pretty neat coming. I know that's just a small thing, but it serves its purpose. We've got base layers. We've got a midweight and a heavyweight base layer in our camouflage that we've got coming. We've got a hand muff. It's got some different fabrics on it to keep it really quiet when you put your hands in and out. And then it's got one of those sweatbands over the buckle in the back, which is something I never could figure out why nobody ever had one of those, because you rub that on bark, that plastic buckle, when you snap that thing around your back, that can be a problem. So we've got that coming. We've got also a late season vest that's going to have 180 grams of Primaloft insulation in it, and so those are the main products that we're going to have. And Terry, I was telling you about some stuff. We've got some fabric and some design things coming that we'll release in March or April that I really think are going to be game changing. And we'll really tee those up social media when they're ready. But a couple things with fabrics and a couple design changes that I think is going to change the game for us bow hunters.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll answer the questions that you just asked, because it runs in parallel with the guy that we're looking at right now, and that's the guy who started Real World. Is that the seed company was made by a guy that bow hunts and understood what bow hunters need and what nobody else had in the marketplace. And I think the parallel between what Don did with Real World and what you've done with Osseo is you're probably the only true committed bow hunter that hunts all over the country in all different kinds of scenarios. That's the only one thinking of putting this stuff on a garment, because most of these people designing these garments aren't hunters.
Well, you see, the really high-end premium brands, all of them were made in the mountains out west. That's where they were founded, and it's just because their market is so small, they have to drift over into the whitetail space, and they make good quality stuff. But the design, the fabrics, and the camouflage is just not that's the gap we saw. That's the gap we filled with Osseo. The prices were crazy, so we wanted to make it consumer direct so the prices would be more reasonable, put a camouflage pattern that really worked for the whitetail guys in tree stands hunting, and then have a really high-end quality garment. And that's the gap we wanted to fill.
Don, Joe's story sounds a little familiar to when you started Real World, doesn't it?
It does. And Joe, I'll give you a warning. When you got a good product, you got about 6 months to run with it, and everybody's going to try to knock it off. But they're going to have a hard time competing with Osseo because you got to run and start, and nobody's got the garments to compare. And I was just asked about it today there in Indiana if I really liked it, because I've been wearing my Osseo on all my consulting visits, just so people can see it. And I think you got a great thing. I don't see your sales slowing down at all. I think you're just going to pick up steam and keep chugging ahead.
Well, fingers crossed. I tell you, it's been a blessing to get hooked up with you guys, and I just again can't thank you enough.
Well, Joe, let's tee up real quick and plug your podcast, because I think that we might even take a segment or two out of this and let you all play it over on yours, if you so choose. You guys asked if you wanted to do that, and if you choose to, we're more than happy with it. But before we sign off here, why don't you plug your podcast? Tell everybody where they can follow you and Osseo at.
Yeah, so our podcast is Mission Whitetail, and Don, you've been on there once. We'll try to get you back on there again. I know you're super busy, but it's Mission Whitetail is the name of the podcast. It's obviously Facebook, Instagram, Mission Whitetail, and then Joe Miles is Joe Miles Hunting. That's my handle on Instagram and Facebook, and then OsseoGear.com is our website.
All right, fantastic.
I want to throw in a couple things while we still got you, Joe. I got one of the cards that you sent me to put in the various orders, book orders or whatever I ship out, send it to all the consulting clients, and we put the plan together. I just want to make sure everyone knows, if you want to order Osseo, get 15% off. You can use the code Higgins15STAR if you're doing it online. I also want to give the 800 number for our Amish listeners. If you're interested in ordering Osseo camo, you can call 1-888-544-7150. And you want to talk just a second about your return policy, Joe, because I know you got the best one in the industry.
Yeah, so we offer free shipping to the guys. They get the stuff, they try it on. If it doesn't fit, we send them a prepaid return label. They can send it back to us. We exchange it for the size they want, and we get all that turned around. If we get the package in before noon, it'll ship that day. Our UPS guy picks up at 3:30. We'll get it turned around that day, and then we do have a lifetime warranty on all of the garments. If 5 years down the road a zipper breaks, send it back. We'll get it repaired, or we'll get you a brand new pair. We believe in the product, and we offer a absolute lifetime guarantee on it.
Can't beat that.
It's as good as it gets.
Joe, we can't thank you enough. Obviously the partnership, but more importantly, you've not only supported us, you've supported Lester's Feet. We had just a phenomenal year with that, and I look at our partners of this podcast as just an extension of helping families and basically doing mission work everywhere we go. I mean, it's all an extension of good people trying to rally together to do something better in our world. And not only that, but your friendship means a lot. It's great to always get to hang out with you and talk with you. Try to learn how to kill all these deer all across the country every year.
Well, thank you all again, guys. We really appreciate it.
Everybody have a good week.
God bless.
Thanks a lot. Y'all take care.